Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Marshall, co-founder and executive director of This Is My Brave. Welcome to episode 9, season 1 of BraveTV. First, we would like to thank the Alkermes Inspiration Grant COVID-19 Relief Fund for sponsoring this season as we continue to explore how COVID-19 and current affairs are impacting our mental health. In today's episode, we will be discussing back to school during the COVID-19 pandemic. Students, parents, and educators across the country are feeling the stress right now. We have Dr. Andrea Esperat, clinician and former head of school at the John Dewey Academy, and Portia Richardson, CEO and founder of Tumani DC, along with This Is My Brave program manager Aaron Gallagher, to discuss how parents can help their students and themselves cope during this difficult and unknown time. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started in just a second, but as a reminder, for those of you who are able to tune in to the episode, we have a very brief survey at the end. We would really love your feedback and participation. It really helps us as we evolve the program. So let's get started. So excited to get us all together for this important conversation. So ladies, will you introduce yourselves? We'll start with Portia and give us a little bit about your background, what brings you to the table for this conversation, and then we'll jump in with some questions.
Yes, so I am Portia Richardson. I am the founder and executive director of Tumani DC Incorporated. And Tumani DC is a nonprofit organization where we provide social and emotional learning opportunities and resources to students as well as adults who support students.
Fantastic. Andrea, will you give us your intro?
Hi, I am a trained clinical and school psychologist and have worked with kids and families for about 20 years, 15, 20 years. Most recently, I led a therapeutic boarding school that was really geared towards teenagers and young adults who were struggling with some pretty serious mental illness or substance abuse issues, suicidal ideation, that sort of thing, and needed an out-of-home placement. And this year, even before the pandemic hit, I sort of transitioned or starting to make a transition into more of a consulting role. So that's what this year brings for me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you both for taking time out of your busy days to join us for this important conversation. And program manager Aaron Gallagher's with us too. So I thought we'd start with a quote that's on the Tumani DC website because I felt like it fit this conversation. I'll just read from here, right on your homepage. We live in a stressful world and our nation's children and adults are coping with new and prevalent emotional realities we cannot ignore. Social and emotional wellness is critical. So that's what we're all thinking about right now is the welfare of our kids, because this pandemic has turned our worlds upside down. So Portia, I guess from your point of view, what would you say is the most pressing thing families are facing right now in regards to the pandemic and how it's adjusted learning?
So for us, the biggest thing has been the equity gaps in the communities that we serve. A lot of families have already, been in this, just kind of fallen at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of COVID. They have been hit hard by COVID, dealing with the grief and the loss, starting out in this. And then students who have not been in school for 5 months. Well, being out of school for 5 months for many of our students means being disconnected from the support systems, the only support systems for some students that they have, sometimes the only healthy outlet that they have, the school social workers, the school care teams, the school therapists, the school psychologists is where they receive a lot of their mental health services. And so being disconnected for 5 months means a lack of access to those support systems and those services. And then the other thing that we can't ignore is being disconnected for 5 months is being disconnected from healthy meals. Some of our students depend on school meals as their 2 meals a day that they are guaranteed each day. And so that has been really daunting for a lot of our students in terms of being, away from school. Another thing is the digital divide. You know, we talk about virtual learning and hybrid learning, but what does that look like for the student who, yes, the school may have access to computers to provide students. And I will note that in under-resourced schools, they have struggled with, you know, providing computers to all of their students. A lot of times they did have laptops, but not enough to accommodate 300, 500, or 700 students. And then even for the schools who did have enough computers, well, we know 30% of families who live in low-income communities do not have access to high-speed internet. So then that's the other issue. So there's just layers and layers and layers of social economic gaps that are now revealing themselves even more during COVID. And it's definitely another pandemic that we cannot ignore during this time. So yes, that's where we've come in and we've tried to fill in a lot of those social and emotional as well as technology gaps.
And we're going to get into more of ideas and maybe suggestions on ways that families can help kind of cope during this difficult time. Andrea, I wanted to ask from your point of view, having worked with families on a level where they're living in a boarding school environment, I guess when they go home for visits or when they leave the therapeutic school, what are some things that you're seeing that that has helped them in making that transition, I guess?
Well, what I've heard from families and from the students is that it's a really big and difficult transition. As you can imagine, they're in this very structured environment where 24/7 they have the support and the services that they've needed. And in most of these residential programs, there is a plan to transition that child over time. And you work very closely with the family to make sure the family is ready, not just the parents, but usually there are siblings at home that need to be considered. And so in the midst of this, quick change, none of that could happen, right? So I think that everyone, as we all are, whether you're in a residential program or whether you're at home in a public school setting, everyone had to adjust very quickly, and that stressor is hard for most people to adapt to. I think now my thinking about going into the fall is we all have that sort of initial shockwave that we felt in March and April, and we can go into the fall, not that we can prepare for everything, but I think if we're thoughtful and sort of reading the writing on the wall, so to speak, that we can work together to come up with better plans so that our children aren't sort of yanked around. I think that's what school districts are struggling the most with, of course, and trying to decide in the best case scenario, even if they open up for this school year, how long does it take? And I'm thinking for colleges as well, how long does it take and what are the factors that would lead a school to reverse course and send all of those students back home? Again, whether it's a college or a residential program or even just public school settings. So I think one of the things that does help in these shockwaves is having a support network, whatever that can be. And so, with this particular group of students, they were very close and the school tried very hard to use technology to keep them connected. It's certainly not anywhere near the same, right? But everyone's doing the best they can. So I think having a strong support network and supporting the families, the parents, is the best we can do, and is really important for supporting those kids. Because if the parents are feeling stressed and overwhelmed, then it's unlikely that the kids are going to feel sort of secure in that kind of situation.
I think that's one of the things, we've all heard that reminder of the flight attendant on the flight putting on our oxygen mask first. I feel like as parents, we need to kind of lead by example as best we can, even though we've all been turned around by this. But Erin, were you gonna jump in with
I was
something?
just going to say, I hear both of you speaking about the most vulnerable of communities among us, and it seems like when everything was normal, we had patched something together. Maybe wasn't ideal, but something was there and it was working. And now we're at a new normal, and who knows how long this is going to go on. And there's just no safety net, really. And so now both of you are left in situations where you're having to start that patch process and put something back together that doesn't leave vulnerable people, young people, lost or, for good. So Portia, I was wondering, how are you filling in that gap? I mean, is that what Tumani DC is faced with right now, is trying to find ways to connect those gaps or bridge those gaps for those students that you serve?
Yeah, so actually, as soon as this, COVID hit and, schools were closing, we immediately reached out to the networks and the students that we serve and our community partners. And so we were able to donate several computers to students through our partnership with the Hustlers Guild. It's another nonprofit organization. Another thing is that we're really happy that we were able to pivot and do a virtual social and emotional learning academy this summer for 6 weeks. And so we did connect with the students at one of our partner schools, Ron Brown High School in DC. And so we had students go through a full curriculum, our own curriculum, and we were able to make that curriculum virtual for those students. They had a combination of Zoom sessions Monday through Thursday. They had mentors that checked in with them one-to-one every Friday, just to see how they were doing, how the curriculum and the program is working for them, but also if there were any ways that we could support them outside of the academy. We worked with families and parents. We connected with the parents to determine their needs and figure out how we can support with that. Our students are graduating tomorrow, so we're having a COVID-conscious graduation at the school tomorrow. And so we're really excited that our students have completed that academy. And then we did have, through the partnership with the Hustlers Guild, we were able to provide our students with Hyperbeats headphones. And they're these really cool headphones that zone out the sound in the background, and they have like mics connected. So we know one of the other gaps is that we know that a lot of our students in our communities, they do not have homes that are conducive to a learning environment. And so there may be family members living in the same home, which will produce noise in the background. So these amazing headphones that were donated by HyperX, they tunes out the sound, and they allow students to focus more on the virtual learning experience. So we're excited that we were able to also give those to our students this week, actually.
That's amazing, and congratulations.
Doing our part to fill in those gaps. But again, it takes a village, and I will definitely not ignore the fact that this segregation by income and race is systematic. And so there's a lot of work to be done beyond just providing computers or access to technology or programming. There's definitely some systematic things that need to happen. And we are joining in the fight and creating seats at the table to take an active role in the policy around this work as well.
That's amazing. And congratulations to your students who are graduating. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
Andrea, I'm wondering, what do you see any kind of resources out there in terms of like what parents can do to help engage their students with wanting to join in any kind of virtual, atmosphere that they can stay engaged with their friends, or any resources out there that you might be able to point to that kids could and parents could look into?
That's a great question. I don't have actual specific resources that come to mind, although I will put a little plug in that I am gearing up to do some virtual programming this fall for that very reason. I know many people are out there providing those services, because I think a lot of us mental health professionals recognize if there was ever a time, I've had many parents say to me, if there was ever a time to step up and help, for those of us, especially who work with this generation, they're at this critical stage anyway, pandemic aside. And this is just, for some kids, they're right on the edge anyway, and it could tip them, into one direction or another. And so we really can't let up our attention, right, on this issue. But it's an important issue, as you know, in the wonderful work that you've been doing all this time. But now it's heightened. So I think that, and I've had parents ask, how do I get my kid motivated, right? Motivated regardless of what the it is, whether it's to keep doing the schoolwork virtually, to stay engaged, to just show up. And then to show up and actually participate. And beyond that, I mean, I love the idea of the social and emotional learning piece. And I think it's developmental as well. So there's a difference if you're talking to a teenager. One tip that I give parents is, the more you press on something that you think should happen, usually most teenagers are going to push back. So you have to be really careful on how you present that. And just ask questions, try to engage in a conversation, and let them come to that idea themselves. And you might toss out something like, oh, I saw this, or I saw that. What do you think about that? And especially if you have a kid who is struggling with depressed mood, even if it's not at a significant clinical level yet, or anxiety, they may not be that motivated to participate, right? And that's part of the challenge, is the very thing that could help them, they might not want to do. And so that, again, it's a little tricky. Oftentimes what I find is if there are any healthy peers in their network that can be sort of a catalyst to get them going, that can be really helpful, right? Much more than a parent saying, I think you should do this. So you just need to be careful on how you present the ideas.
Yeah, I love that Portia mentioned the mentorship idea.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like an adult that a kid looks up to in some capacity, that check-in, even if it's just over text, could really make a huge difference, right? Did you see that, Portia, with the kids and their mentors?
Yeah, absolutely. We found out so much about our students just through those Friday check-ins. And actually, as a staff, we had to start like huddling on Friday evenings just to like debrief all of the information that we had received from students to figure out how we could do the work over the weekend to ensure that we were showing up for students effectively and adequately on that following Monday. And so that was like the biggest component of our program, just the mentorship, the one-to-one check-ins, and, asking students like, how are you feeling? How is your family? Like,
I was just going to say
about academics and everything. Let's just, how are you? How are you feeling? Yeah.
Did that, can you share any insight that came out from the Friday check-ins, that how your team adjusted to what the kids were telling you they needed during this time?
Yeah, so we had a student particularly who stands out to me that, he was saying that his mom is a full-time employee and she's essential, which is the case for most of our students. They don't have the luxury, the parents don't have the luxury of being home with their students. And so our students were 14 and 15-year-olds. So what that looks like is that if you have younger siblings, you may have to babysit while your mom goes to work or your dad goes to work. So, most of our students are from single parent households. And so we found out by talking to this particular student that he was like babysitting his siblings. And he said, Ms. And it's really difficult for me to focus during our sessions from 10 to 12 because I have younger siblings who are needing my attention. And so we had to pivot. We had an expectation that you had to have your camera on because we want to see your face, but we had to check ourselves on that too, because some students do not have backgrounds that they are very proud of and they want us to, see. And so we had to be respectful of privacy and space. So we did allow students to, have the fun, playful backgrounds that you can use on Zoom. We did teach them how to use those if they wanted to change their backgrounds. And we also did give that particular student the option of, just participating without his camera and silently being a silent participant in the academy, because that's impactful as well, is what we realized. We just wanted him and appreciated him being willing to still show up, even though, he had these responsibilities to take care of his siblings. And even a few times during our program, his siblings made an appearance and, we tried to engage them in some of the activities and the things that we were doing. So that was a very powerful moment for us to reflect on our practices, but also to check in with other students. And we found out that he was not the only student who was responsible for, taking care of younger siblings during this time.
I wonder if that's going to be the case in many households. I feel like it will be the case this school year.
Absolutely.
It's great that you were able to work with them. And I know in our teen group that we've worked in partnership with a nonprofit called Our Minds Matter. They do these mental health awareness clubs with high schoolers. We've had meetings, and some of the kids do prefer to have their cameras off, and they will engage in the chat. And you have to, the group leaders are very dynamic in how they get feedback and participation in many different ways. And I think that's what we need to recognize as adults and as educators and as support system, that there are different ways they want to participate.
Yeah. And I guess that's a piece of advice that I would have for, teachers, families, community leaders, is that we all have to just check our bias, and we all have to just not assume, because, a student who may not be participating or as active as we would like them to be, that may mean that they have some other things that they're dealing with in their homes, and that we have to be understanding and aware of that. We have to show empathy. We have to show and respect diversity amongst our participants and amongst our students during this time, because we just don't know, all of what they're dealing with and all that they may not be sharing with us.
Well, that leads into another question. Or Erin, did you have something?
No, I'm taking a deep breath because it's a lot. How are we going to do this for another year? I mean, like, I'm really just kind of taking it all in, and it's just so much.
It made me think of another question about, in getting this feedback from kids and from from trying to engage with them virtually, is there anything we can share with them on how to decompress from all this stress, right? So I know for me, I've been trying to get out in nature and been walking, and I drag my son out of bed in the morning. He's 11, and I wake him up at 6:15, say, let's go for a sunrise walk, and he will go with me. I think that they just need a little encouragement, but is there anything that we can share with them as parents, as support system, on how to adjust to this new normal and how to decompress from the stress we're going through?
Yes, I just want to say I love that idea. And actually, that was a tip I was going to share with parents. And one, it helps you as a parent, because you have to come up with your own new routines and rhythms and adjust. And I think especially if for those people who are working from home, there's pluses and minuses to be able to work from home. One of the things is you're there all the time, and it sometimes can be more difficult to unplug versus if you go to work and then you have that, the routine of your commute or whatever it is that you used to do. So coming up, think for yourself first, what is going to help me start my day well, sort of that morning time, like you said, that sunrise walk. And then at the end of your workday, and maybe at lunch too, but at the end of the workday and then in the evening, having a routine for yourself, and then as a family or with your child, brainstorming together. And if they're 11, or even if they're 17 and they'll listen to mom or dad say, we're going to go on a morning walk. Or even if you just model that, I have a daughter who's just finished college, and she's older, but she even though she knows what helps, as we all can get, right, after months of being cooped up in the house and the stress, it can be very hard to motivate ourselves. So I like to say, as a family, there's like a tag team, right? If you have, or a friend who can help you say, let's get out in the morning, or let's get out the end of the day. So you've got to shut that laptop down. Same thing for our kids. They've been Zooming all day. I say, if it's possible, get them outside, even if it's just 10 minutes, fresh air, move your body, great to do at midday, get all the wiggles out. And it does wonders for our ability to focus and connect with ourselves, and then connect with other people. But I think, just get creative with it. You might have a nice family dinner question, or, I'm thinking about the student of yours that's in charge of his siblings during the day while mom's at work. What is the routine at the end of the day? Mom's got to take care of herself, and maybe there's a mindfulness, again, 3-5 minutes that she can just check in with herself before she walks back into the household where the kids have been missing her all day. oldest son is stressed, from handling it all day. And, again, it's going to be creative and look unique for your family. But I think that's going to be the difference between stumbling through this season and actually coming together as a family or community and feeling like, okay, we can do this, and this is how we're going to do it.
I do think it is an opportunity for us to grow together versus, be overly stressed and let it bring us down. But there's that roller coaster of what we're going through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, during our curriculum, we actually taught mindfulness. It's a component of our curriculum. Each lesson includes a mindful moment where we taught students how to use music, as a calming technique. We talked to students about the importance of like physical activity, sports. A lot of them tapped into that. We did meditations where we just literally sat in silence and noticed everything that, the air, the breathing, the space that we're in, the moment that we're in right now. And I think that our students, this was something that they had never done before, but now they have a newfound love and respect for silence and for mindfulness and meditation. So that was a major opportunity for growth and development amongst the students in our program, is incorporating mindfulness as a self-care strategy. And during one session, a parent actually jumped in and she shared her favorite song. So we would check in and say, like, pick a song that, represents your mood today. And so one of our parents jumped in and shared a song that, expressed how she felt that day. And it was a very, very powerful song. So yeah, parents were starting to kind of chime into the sessions as well. So we realized that they needed, the social and emotional development and learning skills as well.
I think there's so much we can take away from this whole time period. I hope that our kids look back and realize how much we all care and how much we're all trying to come up with these ways of coping and handling it. And I hope that we all just find the time to have that mindfulness moment and just know that we will get through this, and it'll take everyone coming together and doing their part. But if I could ask each of you a piece of advice that you would want to leave the audience with, again, during this time, what's one thing maybe that's helped you or that's helped the families that you work with? Andrea, will you start?
Yeah, I think when I think about the main message that I would give to parents, knowing a lot of the challenges of the parents that I've worked with over the years, and as a parent myself, is that our children are very resilient. And I think that this generation of, as parents, we can tend to be a little more fearful or anxious for our kids than maybe previous generations. And so I think that it's not to minimize what's happening at all. And it's not to say ignore warning signs. We should absolutely be paying attention if you see something that really is concerning to you and your child. But I think overall, if you could remind yourself that we are going to get through this, they're going to get through it, and believe that they're strong enough to get through it, even in the research shows that for most people who've gone through some kind of traumatic experience in their life, the majority of them do not suffer long-term negative consequences of that. Of course, some people do, but we are resilient human beings. So if you start feeling really anxious, like what's going to happen to my kid after this, regardless of the age, I would just have a little mantra for yourself that even if you don't believe it for yourself right now, repeat it over and over. They're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this, and they're going to be okay. I think we can always come up with reasons why we think they're not going to be okay, but most of the time they will be.
Good
so
advice.
Just have hope. Mm-hmm.
Have hope. I carry it with me every day.
There you go.
Portia, what would you say?
Well, Tamani means hope in Swahili. So,
Well, there's our theme.
There you go.
So we are always pushing hope, and I will echo that, just remind yourself that there is hope and that this will pass, that this is not permanent, but also check in with yourself and check in with your kids, check in as a family. As a family, my family, we do restorative circles. And so we will bring the kids and everyone into a circle together, and we would just check in. How are you feeling? What's something good that happened this week? What's something that concerns you that may have happened this week? How can we, what can we do as a family to fix that or to make it better? I think those conversations, even if they're not a structured conversation, it can happen during dinner. We have these cute little cards and things that we order from Amazon where you could they're like conversation starters that you use during dinner. And so we use those very actively with our kids so that they can, open up and share and talk, and then be creative about it. Have your kids draw a picture of how they're feeling. Have them play a song that represents how they're feeling. But I think it's really important to check in, not just with our kids, but check in with ourselves and, just really give ourselves grace and understand that we are doing our best as parents in this space, because it's a lot. Teleworking and homeschooling all in one, cooking 3 meals a day when you're used to being at work and your kids, are at school. So, it's just a lot for all of us. And we just have to be sure that we are showing up for ourselves, just as we're showing up for our families and our kids. And just give empathy, just be very empathetic to everyone you pass by, as you're, moving on, your kids, your neighbors, the people in the store, just be very empathetic, because again, we just don't know how this is impacting the world and the people around us.
I love that. And having this, giving everyone grace and that empathy is, I think, so critical to remember as we move through this. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge and insight into this important topic. And we wish everyone the best as they navigate back to school. And don't forget to check out Tumani DC's website because they're doing incredible things. So, Andrea, thank you. Portia, thank you. Aaron, thank you. We say that all the time, that we're navigating this and we want to be mindful. So thanks everyone for tuning in for another episode of Brave TV. We'll see you again next week. And
thank you.
Bye. Thanks, guys.